Do you want to know how you can win with pure Harlequins? Ghosts of the Webway detachment and the Aeldari Codex can be ran with purely Harlequins. And today, on Ops, episode 39, I'm going to break down 3 army lists. That way, you know how to run them purely and my thoughts on how to perform and strategies and tips on how to win with pure Harlequins. So stay tuned and locked in. All right, so let's go ahead and get into it. So, 2 of the 3 lists here currently, I've actually tried. I've actually went to tournaments with these. Haven't been to any GTs yet. Just haven't had the opportunities, or there haven't been any GTs in my local area. The next GT that's coming up is actually mine, and I'm not going to participate in my own GT. So, I'm going to show you some good performing lists, specifically one of them that I actually went to an RTT recently. I'll tell you about what's a challenge for us, what's easier for us to deal with. But basically, I'll give you all my pro tips and tricks onto how to perform well with just pure Harlequins. Now, let's start off with the Murder Clowns and Snipers. So actually, this is the list that I took with me over to an RTT. This is actually a non-pure list. It only has 55 points. It is not a Harlequin unit in here. I didn't want to be below 55 points, obviously, or scramble around and have to change characters out, things like that. We don't have a lot of low-cost units. We are very, very pricey when it comes to points. So I want to make sure that you completely understand that. We're probably pointed way too high, to be quite honest with you. Games Workshop really needs to buff our units and drop them in points. I would say maybe the Troop Master, Solitaire are probably going to end up staying around the same, since they're probably the 2 best data sheets in the book, right? But everything else, the troops being at 85 points, I think it's just well overpriced. I think it should be more around 75 points per unit. I think that the boats themselves, the Star Weavers, right, should be roughly around 70 points each, so a 10-point decrease on both Troop and Star Weavers. Void Weavers, I think, need to be dropped down to about 110 to 100 points. I think we're just a little bit pricey at the moment. And then Sky Weavers, I think they need a significant reduction, as there are Terminators, there are different units in the game, and that's apples and oranges. I completely understand that, comparing it to different armies, and I absolutely have a disdain for that, right? I don't like comparing one unit from one army to another unit in another army, because we're arguing semantics at this point, and it's apples and oranges. They have their points in that book for a particular reason, because it either points out that army and the list that you can build in that particular army to an appropriate amount, or it's just set that way. That way, you just can't break, those army lists that you create with that army faction itself. For example, we're probably paying the sin still from our previous editions of how Harlequins used to do so well in our previous just independent codex. So probably the reason why we were throwing in to the Aeldari Codex, because they didn't want us to run it individually. I do not prefer that, to be quite honest with you. I miss the days of Dark Light and things like that, where we have different detachments, different ways to play this army. But it is what it is currently, and we're just going to have to deal with it, specifically myself. All right. So in this army list, I think that a Solitaire is always an auto include if you're running pure Harlequins. He is a beat stick, right? Also, as a friendly reminder, he does not have he does have the Harlequin keyword, so he can be put in the Star Weaver, just so you're aware, right? I know that previous editions we weren't allowed to put him in there, but he has the Harlequins infantry faction keyword. So he is allowed to go in there now. That includes the Death Jester and things like that. That way you can shoot out of the boats, things like that. So Solitaire is definitely an auto include. It's a great piece. Having that fight first, having that lone op really makes him absolutely amazing. So I think he's priced a little bit high for a character with 4+ invo and 4 wounds, but this is where we sit at this moment. Also have 3 Troop Masters in here, one of them with the Kegarox Coil. The Kegarox Coil allows me to basically do more mortar wounds, because and impact mortar wounds at that, right? Because we are death by 1,000 cuts if you're running it purely. If you're not running without, you know, Dark Reapers and Fire Dragons and things like that, Fire Prisms, whatever it might be, a lot of Bright Lances, you're really going to be at a deficit when it comes to using everything that's in the data sheet. So it's a real challenge. Just to let everyone know, it's a real challenge to really play pure Harlequins. You're going to have to be very methodical. You're going to have to practice a lot. You're going to have to really understand every single army. It's not like just picking up an army and it's just, you know, you go and you do perform well because it's the new shiny toy. It's not as good as Aeldari can kind of configure their army list when you know you're obviously auto-including Fire Dragons and Dark Reapers, things like that. Spiders as well, right? Those are the list that you take spiders as well. So Harlequins are a little bit more challenging when it comes to that. We're a lot more tricksy. We really have to depend on our boats. You're actually going to see a list where I don't have any boats whatsoever, but we'll talk about that once we come on to that army list itself and my reasoning why potentially that list can perform well. But we have 3 Troop Masters, obviously the Warlord being the Impact Mortar Wounds Kegarox Coil enhancement on that one. It allows him to do Impact Mortar Wounds, right? So you can come in and throw a grenade, do Impact Mortar Wounds, and then on top of that, hit that unit with this Troop Master and 5 or however many girls you have in that unit. Usually if you're running a Star Weaver, you're just going to have 5 other girls with you. On average, for me, right, at least with my dice rolls, and I don't have the best dice rolls in the world. I'm not blessed by the dice gods. On average, I usually do about 50%. So usually throwing a grenade, I do about 50%. Usually doing Impact Mortar Wounds, I do about 50%. So if you total that together, that's about 6 mortar wounds in total. If they're 1 wound models, if you're going into a mirror match, obviously that's 6 dead models, right? And in retrospect, that's 3 dead Space Marines, anything that has 2 wounds. Very, very good though. I really like this addition to have the enhancement on the Troop Master. It really helps out, really whittle down those units and just get them out of there a lot quicker. I've seen the benefit between the grenades and the Impact Mortar Wounds from the Kegarox Coil enhancement really help out a lot, especially particular units that, you know, might have a higher toughness, and I'm just, you know, basically rolling wounds to just fish for dev wounds. This really helps out for all of those situations and just do more mortar wounds as well. I really wish that we had the ability to do reroll wounds. I know we can do that with different characters in Aeldari, but we're talking about pure Harlequins here. I wish they had the ability to do that, and I also wish that they had a detachment with more relevant information and rules attached to it, like maybe a -1 across the board for the entire army. But once again, we are where we are, and hopefully we get cheaper and maybe a couple things change in the future on a, you know, GW patch. Also, I'm going to bring in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units of troops, 85 points. Now, I do like to equip my lead player with the Power Sword. The Power Sword has a higher AP, which is usually very good if you're going against Space Marines or things with 2+ armor saves. You probably shouldn't be going against those particular type of units by just 1 unit by itself, right? But if you smack a unit of Terminators, like let's just say 10 Terminators with 3 units of troops and 3 Troop Masters and you throw grenades and you have the impact mortar wounds, it's really going to help you a lot. Actually, I played a game against World Eaters, Terminators, and ran in there with about 20 troops. Killed them all that turn with 3 characters as well. It was an absolute challenge, right? How to throw grenades, how to do the impact mortar wounds, how to make sure that I had enough death wounds just to take care of them because they didn't have any feel no pain. And if they did have feel no pain, it was only a 6 up, which really didn't help them a lot. So I really like to take the power sword on there. Obviously, I do my attack separately because it's AP2 as opposed to AP1, like all of the Harlequin special weapons. I also do take the Harlequin special weapons. Now, there's a debate out there where people say they'd rather just take the blade because they get the additional attack. I personally don't prefer the strength 3 over the strength 4. I've seen in historically and in actual gameplay that having strength 4 is a little bit better for you, especially going into those Space Marine type units that have toughness 4. Also easier to going into the mirror match where you could potentially wound on 2s, right? Because if you're strength 4, they're toughness 3, you can do the +1 to wound, which is innate for the data sheet for the troops, and then wound on 2s, which is very, very nice. Obviously, you're just trying to fish for 6s anyways, but wounding on 2s is very, very nice. We've always seen that. We've always heard about what Blood Angels can do when they're getting a +1 to wound. You know, previously in their last edition was very nice and made them very strong, and also makes these troops very strong as well. Yeah, you lose that attack. How you can circumvent that sometimes is doing the +1 to hit, right? That way you can ensure that you're getting a lot of hits, and then maybe you're not getting the +1 to wound. Most of the time, I take the +1 to wound. Otherwise, it's just +1 to hit if the toughness is just too high. So I have 5 units of these. Just want to make sure that we have enough battle line OC2 on the tabletop. Also, taking 5 Rangers. This is the 55 points that I was telling you about. It's not pure Harlequins. This is the list that I've been using currently, just trying it out, see how it feels, right? Having those Rangers are mostly superfluous, to be quite honest with you. They don't usually put in a lot of work other than holding objective markers. So if you want to see value in them for holding objective markers, having innate, fade back and their rules, they have a D6 kind of fade back in their data sheet, which is really nice. If something tries to come close to you, right, you could just fall back. But using their Ranger, long rifles and things like that have not been at the ultimate benefit to me while I've been using them. Maybe 1 or 2 characters I've kind of shot into, but really didn't help much. And also the type of army list that I went against were more monsters or dreadnoughts and things like that. Things that you don't want to waste your long rifles into, which are only strength 4 and 1 AP. So really nice for them to be 2 damage, right? Really nice, but you're only hitting on 3s, 36 inches, things like that. So they only have a 3+ save. They do have a 5+ invulnerable save, which is pretty nice. So it lets them survive just a little bit longer, but not much more. I also have 2 units of Skyweavers. I know a lot of people who are not the biggest fan of these because they are they are very subjective and when you can use them, right? They're only really great against vehicles. Everything else being strength 3, they're not really good into. So it's actually a challenge to try to figure out exactly what you want to hit with them. Now, what I have found from my experience is that if there's not a prime target that has a vehicle keyword, I immediately turn them into a close combat unit. So I try to go out there and get as close as possible, and try to fight them in close combat because their close combat weapons, their Zephyr Glaives, are very good. They have strength 6, AP2, 2 damage flat, and 4 attacks every single unit, which is very nice. So I usually put those into a close combat unit. Otherwise, they become a tank hunting unit if there are vehicles on the tabletop, and a close combat unit as well. So they have dual utility when there's vehicles on the tabletop. and they become a singular utility when there's no vehicles. They just go into close combat mode. Also, getting out there, holding objectives, they move pretty fast, right? The footprint of just having 4 of them is really nice as well. It's not like it used to be. So you can actually maneuver them around ruins, try to hold objectives, try to get on different board edges when you're trying to do your secondaries, things like that. So they help out a lot tremendously. I think that I will continue to have Skyweavers running pure Harlequins, and there's not much for us to select from anyways when it comes to our pure data sheets. So I take just 8 Skyweavers. You'll see one of the other lists where I took 0 Skyweavers, and another army list where I took 12 of them. Also, Void Weavers. Void Weavers are very inconsistent. I have seen in my experience that they have only 2 shots, and they usually only hit one of them. The other one ends up going through because it's strength 12, and it's predominantly wounding everything on 3s, if not 2s, right? Depending on what you're using it on. And that's obviously predicated on you not using the dispersed pulse, which is just 2d6 hitting on 3s, 4, 0, 1. And the focused lances are strength 12, AP 3, 4 damage flat. But it's only 2 shots. I've just seen it's been inconsistent for me. We don't have any re-rolls when it comes to shooting if you're using pure Harlequins. So it makes it more of a challenge. Now, there are different ways, and we'll talk about that in the future, how to make these a little bit better potentially, like taking Lycus or Eldrad, things like that, where you can give them, sustains on 5s or lethals or whatever it might be. You can make them a little bit better. But in pure Harlequins, they're just very subpar. But I still think that taking them is very good, because when they do damage, they chip away a lot at 4 damage flat. And having 3 of them fire at one thing, even if you get 3 of them to hit and 2 of them to go by the armor save, that's still 8 damage, which can be really, really nice depending on what you're hitting, right? So it can definitely put a dent into like a Mortarion or something like that. Also, I have 5 Star Weavers. 5 Star Weavers are transporting the troops, of course. So they don't, have to survive on foot, which makes it a challenge for them, right? Them having to survive on foot just makes it worlds harder for you to really play the army. So you're going to have to really understand, how to play the army very methodically. If you're using no boats whatsoever, you're going to have to hide behind ruins. You're going to have to go, behind sections where, or footprints rather, obscuring sections, so you don't get tagged very easily, because troops do die very easily. They're super, super fragile. They're not going to survive a bolter shot. Over the weekend, I got shot by just some Plague Marine bolters, and I think just 8 shots ended up killing 3 or 4 of the models out of the unit itself. Obviously, it's a dice roll. It's the luck of the dice gods. But I didn't have Kegarok in my favor, so my dice rolls were not good in that game. But yeah, just breaking down this list, right? You got 5 troop units that you always want to put into the Star Weavers. You want to throw the Troop Masters in there, obviously attached to 3 of the Troop troop units. You can also throw the Solitaire in there just so he can get that additional 3 inches. Just hopping out of there, he can advance and charge as well, which is really, really nice. So that can help him get that additional 3 inches, even though he moves a lot already. But talking about the troops, just giving you tips and tricks, right? The troops you want to put in boats, the situation where you want to either get very close to something that's a vehicle, get within 3 inches of it so you can get that melter range on your fusion pistols, or you can hop out and hop back in the fight phase and shoot it in that way. Usually I try to do it from the boat itself. That way I am both protected and not having to sit out there with the girls sitting on whatever it might be, and something can do an overwatch or You never know if you're jumping out 3 of them, and that's how I like to do them as well. I like to stagger them. I know we have 5, but I usually like to stagger about 2 of them. I'll throw them out there, use fusion pistols, use the shuriken cannons, and try to whittle down units, and then potentially fall back once units start moving in their phase and start shooting. That's 2 units right there. They can fade back, right, and get out of harm's way. So I try to break it down like either 2 or 3 units where I'm really rushing out there, try to tag things with my fusion pistols and shuriken cannons, and either hop out of the vehicle to get that extra range if I need it, or stay in the vehicle and just fire out of the vehicle itself, and just really get that extra protection and not having to jump into the boat. But either way, you're completely protected. The only way you're not protected, like I said before, is you can get potentially overwatch. I know we have the ability with agile maneuvers to not get overwatch, but you really never know what unit's going to get overwatched on. So for full protection, you might want to keep them in the Star Weavers, just fire out of the firing decks, and utilize them like that. If you don't, then you can hop them out, and in the fight phase, the end of the fight phase, you can hop them right back into the boat and keep them protected. So that's the multi-use that I do with these troops and Star Weavers. Sky Weavers, I usually either put in strategic reserves, and that can be very iffy as well. Some games, if you have vehicles on the tabletop and they're very elitish, like I saw in one of my games where I went against Custodes and I put them in strategic reserves. It ended up working out in my benefit, but I ended up going against Death Guard, and Death Guard was really the antithesis of what Harlequins do currently. It might have just been me in that game as well, but I ended up going 2-1 over the weekend for RTTs with pure Harlequins, or this list itself, right? The third game was Death Guard. I put the Sky Weavers in strategic reserves, came in turn 2. He already laid out, a lot of blocking areas with his Nurgling, so I couldn't come on and really destroy his blow drones and his tank, right? So very smart of that individual to do that, and it ended up costing me the game because I didn't have the Haywire on the tabletop to destroy those vehicles that were just picking me off with the barrage weapons, the indirect fire weapons for the Plague Burst crawlers. So in those games, I would advise you to keep them on the tabletop. I know this is a lot of things that's going to be in your deployment zone. You're going to have 5 Star Weavers. You're going to have 8 bikes, 2 units of 4, and then 3 Void Weavers as well. So it can be a challenge to really put these in your deployment zone. And that's why sometimes I try to put things in strategic reserve so I don't get clipped and shot turn 1. But there are other ways. Just make sure you hide them back a little bit further. That's okay. You're very fast. You're going to get to them anyways. You can do +2 movement, swift as the wind for 4 units because you have 4 agile maneuver tokens, right? So you can do that and just give them 16-inch flat movement on your bikes. Just kind of get them hitting out. And just me thinking out what I would have done instead of doing what I did at that RTT. But otherwise, it performed very well. I went against Custodes. There was full of Telemons and Dreadnoughts and 3 Caladiuses, and did very well against that. And also, first game was, I want to say, against Necrons, and did very well against that as well. And where it ended up hurting me was going against Death Guard, because any close combat army, anything that wants to fight, which troops want to fight, troop masters, solitaires, and everything, it makes it a lot more challenging for us, especially if you're next to the Nurglings, where you can get -1 in weapon skill, -1 to hit roll when you're fighting in melee, things like that. So it makes it a real challenge. Also, them having the Dreadnought, the Terminators, right? The Terminators just really makes it a challenge to kill those Death Shroud Terminators because of the -1 damage, -1 to hit. I ended up killing both Death Shroud units of 6 because I had to basically throw my whole army at it. But probably in the future, I wouldn't do it that manner, right? That way I don't have to waste so much resources and having to kill 12 models and leave everything else on the board, like Mortarion just walking around doing what he wants, and having my Void Weavers taken out about turn 1, turn 2 very quickly. That really hurt my ability to kill Mortarion. So just be very methodical, be very leery about what, worry about what you're doing. Just go in there, try to shoot things, keep your distance, keep in the baby loan up for your Void Weavers, right? Keeping out of 18 inches. That way you can shoot things down and not get shot in return. If you do get shot, then you could fade back, things like that. So, but yeah, this is the list, and it's been performing very well. I've actually been practicing it for about seven games in the last week since the book has come out, and it's been performing fairly well. I have went 6-1 so far, and hopefully if you use a list like this, you can perform very well also. All right, now moving on to the second army list. This is called Ghost Only. Now this is going to be a pure list of just Harlequins. The next one as well. This one is actually going to have Star Weavers in it, and I wanted to make sure that I took Death Jester in here as well, and especially with the Murderer's Jest. The Murderer's Jest is really nice. It allows you to, it could be better, obviously, right? It creates a scenario where it's just overkill because all of your hits become critical hits, and if you put sustained hits 3 on top of that, it makes your life a lot better, right? And that way you can end up getting multiple hits with it. So Death Jester with the Murderer's Jest enhancement is really nice. You get the Solitaire, as always, like I was telling you, he's usually an auto include. Then you have 2 Shadow Seers, one with the Mask of Secrets, where basically the weapons that you're getting attacked with in melee become hazardous, which is really nice. I've actually used this list a couple of times as well, previous to using my other list that I just showed you, right? I used this about 3 times, in an RTT, or 4 times rather, 1 practice and 1 RTT. This performed very well. I actually like how it performed. It performed very well against orcs. It gives you the model count, and obviously when you're getting hit, usually how I stage this as well, not like the others where I was telling you before, I kind of stage 2 waves of Star Weavers and with Troop Masters in it and fusion pistols, and just try to shoot things down. With the 2 Shadow Seers, I usually try to throw them out there first. They're kind of the sacrificial lambs. They go out there, and they're a lot more of a challenge to really hit as well, because they have baby loan up as well, so they can't be shot at unless they're within 18 inches because of the Shadow Seer's ability. And I want to say that they get stealth as well. She gives out stealth. Yeah, the Fog of Dreams. So, yep, gives out stealth as well. So being -1 to hit and loan up, baby loan up 18 is really nice. So I like to stagger those girls out there first, especially the one with the Mask of Secrets, because if they do fight you in melee, they're going to take hazardous, which is very nice. You usually get a couple models to die out, and really helps taking those 3 mortal wounds. And then of course I take 3 Troop Masters, still taking the impact mortal wounds in the charge phase for the Kegarok's Coil. Like I told you, it's really nice to do those additional mortal wounds, throwing grenades on top of that, so that unit really starts kicking butt really nicely. As always, I like to take a lead player with the Power Sword, 2 fusion pistols, 2 neural disruptors, and special weapons on all the girls except for the lead player as well. I already explained why I like going up to strength 4 instead of strength 3. Now, this is just a personal preference. If you're blessed by the dice gods and you roll a lot of 6s onto wound, I don't know why my wound rolls are always less consistent. I don't know why the second roll of anything is less consistent. I usually get rolls that are just, less in value. I usually roll more 1s, 2s, and 3s when I go to wound than I do for hits. Very strange, but I guess that's what the dice god has blessed me with. And we actually take 6 of them, 6 units of troops in this one, and 3 Void Weavers, and then 6 Star Weavers as well. So as you can see, there is no Star Weavers in this list. Like I was telling you previously, there's going to be a list with no Star Weavers. There's going to be a list with 12 Star Weavers and a list with 8 Star Weavers, which we just saw. So how I usually use this on the tabletop is I end up trying to position myself with several boats mid-board where I'm putting 3 of them, right? Because I have 6 of them, 3 of them like catty corner to a ruin that's pretty close to the center, but close to a quarter that's directly adjacent to me. And another one in my deployment zone area, right? Or within the proximity of it. And then I stage them there. That way I have the ability to just jump anywhere, wherever I need to go. Because of the amount of fusion pistols that you have in this list, because you're going to have 3 units with 3 of them in each of them, and then 3 more units with 2 of them each. So you're going to have a whopping total of 9 and 6, 15 fusion pistols in your list, which is really nice. 3 of them hitting on 2s because of the troop masters. So I always take fusion pistols on them as well. Same thing that I did on the other list. I took 3, fusion pistols on 3 of the units because they have the troop masters. And then take the neural disruptors as well. Really nice going into infantry, anti-infantry 2-up. It's really nice using those. That way you don't have to use your shurikens. These are just slightly better. And having 3 void weavers as always. That way you have some ability to really punch up. This army can't punch up very well. Having strength 12, AP 3, 4 damage flat on these prismatic cannons are really nice. So I do advise you, if you're going to continue to run pure. Now this can always be swapped out with Dark Reapers and Fire Dragons. We talked about that previously, and we'll talk about that in another episode once we start intermingling different units from Aeldari. But I like to run it pure. I like the challenge, right? There's a lot of people in this world who just like the challenge. Some people might just play Imperial Fist, right? Because they like the challenge and they love their Imperial Fist. Well, I love my Harlequins, and I'm going to make them work sooner or later. Even if I'm a 5-1 or 5-X type of player, when it comes to GTs, I'll still be very happy just winning 5 games with pure Harlequins, especially when nobody's really doing that as well and inhibiting themselves to this challenge that I'm doing. So hopefully you join me and running pure Harlequins, right? And see how well you do. And hopefully you perform better than I do, right? Hopefully you can go out there and win a GT with pure Harlequins, or maybe just 1 unit because you had a funky number of points like I do with the snipers, the rangers, and you still win that. I still consider that a pure Harlequin list. And I'm not being biased about that. I really think that there's no units that we have are Harlequins that are 55 points, so there's nothing else I could put in there other than rangers. And then, of course, 6 Star Weavers. And like I was telling you, I like to put a catty quarter to one of the quarters, closer to the quarters that's adjacent to you, right? And then try to stage the other 3 Star Weavers next to your deployment zone area, next to mid-board. That way you get in prime position to really run out there, fusion pistol things, or you got to jump out and you got to fight things, right? And I've really seen with this army, you have to hit 1 unit, depending on what units those are. If they're Terminators, or they're Light Lord Terminators, or they're Death Shroud, or suits for Tau, battle suits for Tau. You really got to hit it with multiple units because we're really death by 1,000 cuts. But don't forget, you can throw grenades, hit it with the impact mortar wounds enhancement from the Troop Master, the Kegarop's Coil, things like that. You can also pling some wounds off from the Void Weavers, potentially help you out. And the Death Jester as well, put some wounds into maybe that character. Maybe that character is giving the unit feel no pain, and you want to precision that character out before you jump into it. You can do that with the Death Jester and it really help you out. So this is really how I use this one, kind of similar to how I use the other one. I just stage it a lot differently. You have more girls in here as well, as opposed to having 25 from the list previously. You have 30 in here, not including the characters, and you have more characters in here as well. This also means that if someone takes Fix, they could potentially take Assassination against you and maybe bring it down with all of the boats that you have. So they could just take those 2, but you already know at that point in time, if they're taking Fix, what they're going to take against you, and you can try to manipulate the game by not allowing that individual to really have it their way and have to bring it down and killing the characters. You could throw out, the Void Weavers out there first and just see how that helps out with the baby loan up. Just plink units off and hit units with multiple of your units. That way, retaliation is not going to be insufferable, and you're going to end up losing models, specifically your character, which you should not allow, because this list right here has 6 characters, which can definitely give out some good assassination points. But this list plays just slightly different, especially that you don't have the Haywire Star Weavers in here as well, or the Sky Weavers rather. So you played a little bit differently. It feels a little bit more simpler also to play this list, to be quite honest with you, because you don't have to worry about the bikes and the Void Weavers and the Star Weavers with the troops inside of it. You kind of just have to position yourself with your boats, get your Void Weavers, just in a good enough range where you can hit within 24 inches but not be hit with baby loan up 18 inches. So this plays a little bit more simply than it does with the other list. The other one, you just have multiple units and you have multiple agendas with all of those units. Like I was telling you, you have, the Sky Weavers where you literally change their role in the game and what army you're going up against. This one doesn't have that challenge. This one, you're just going to go out to whatever you need to go to, whatever army it is that you're going into, and not have to worry about maybe your Haywire doing some work or not doing some work. You're going to have to really depend on your Void Weavers to punch up, and your Fusion Pistols to punch up as well, and really try to kill those pesky units out there and those vehicles and monsters as well. So this is how this list plays out. It's 25 points below. I know it sucks. I hate being in that position, but there's really nothing else to take since I've already taken 3 enhancements in here as well. Unless I drop one of these enhancements and add some more girls to the unit, something like that. I could potentially add, 1 girl to one of the boats that doesn't have a character attached to it, but you really want to have all of these characters, which there's 6, and there's 6 boats, and there's 6 troop units, right? All inside of those boats, and that's the reasoning why I didn't take an additional troop in those units, because I want to put all of my characters, minus the Solitaire, of course, inside those Star Weavers as well, the Death Jester, the 2 Shadow Seers, and the 3 Troop Masters. And the last list that I want us to talk about today is the Foot Clan. Being a young kid, Shredder, Ninja Turtles, the Foot Clan, right? So has no relevance to this, right? Obviously, one is clowns and another ones are ninjas, but they're quite similar because they are murderous ninjas, right? In a way. So we're gonna look into the Foot Clan and this list right here. As always, like I told you, I like to take the Solitaire. I think that's an auto-include model regardless of the points. It's almost like Angron for World Eaters, even though he went up by 20, 25 points, whatever. You still take him, right? The Solitaire you still take is absolutely amazing. And I haven't been telling you exactly how I use my Solitaire. Now, I like to use my Solitaire to take out flanks, weak flanks, things like that. The Solitaire does not hit really, really well. He doesn't have any rerolls to hit, to wound, things like that. He has better defense mechanisms because he has the, true loan op and stealth and things like that, but he doesn't have the ability to really punch up too well, even though he has all of those attacks. He only ends up really killing maybe 2 to 5 models actually get destroyed with this model. So not too well, but he can catch your opponent off guard, especially if he dies, he reses back, he's within 6 inches, and then he can charge in your opponent's turn, which is really nice, like I've talked about in previous videos. Also, I have 2 Shadow Seers as well in this list. I don't have the Death Jester, but we do have the Troop Master with the Kakarot's Coil, the Impact Mortal Wounds, and the Charge Phase. This one, I did go up 1 model each because I had 30 points left over. roughly. So yeah, 30 points left over. So went up each model 15, putting in 6 of them, because we are going to be on foot and no boats. So it really doesn't matter at that point. There's no restrictions to how many they can be carried inside a Star Weaver when you're not taking any of them. And then we have complete 6 units of troops just running around, 3 units of 4 Sky Weavers as well. So you're taking the maximum amount of 12, and then 3 Void Weavers, as always, in all of the lists that we talked about today that we've been using. So now this list right here, I've actually only used this once in practice. This plays very differently. You really need to hide a lot of advancing and no advance and charge in this army. So you have to play. It's more of a challenge than the other 2 lists, to be quite honest with you, because I kind of went off with the first list, which is a medium type of difficulty. The second one was easy mode, and this one is just challenging mode, because you only have a 4+ invul, you only have 1 wound, right? Unless you're running around with the Shadow Seers, you don't have lone op, you don't have stealth, you don't have any of those things. So, you can't make it more of a challenge for people to shoot at you. So you have to use ruins to your advantage, hiding behind ruins, buildings, taking advantage of the footprints for the obscuring rule, things like that. So you have to play very, very tight with this list. You only have a finite amount of models. You only get 32 troops actually in this one. So because of their price, right? We wish that they were a lot cheaper. I would like to take 2 units of 12 and attach a character into both of them for 13 models. I would love to do 2 units of that, right? If they were a lot cheaper. I think that would be very, very good. I think they can do some potential damage, especially if you take that 1 enhancement that gives a unit infiltrate for one of the Shadow Seers, which can be very nice. And I believe I took it on, yes, I took the Mistweave on this Shadow Seer right here. Has infiltrate ability, yep. So the Mistweave has gives you infiltrate ability for that unit, which is really nice. And then you get that lone op on top of it, and you get the hazardous. So stacking up those abilities can help you out defensively. Offensively, the only thing that I like about the Shadow Seer is that she has D3 damage to her weapons. So sometimes you get that 3 damage when you're hitting things in melee, which is really nice because we don't have anything else that is an infantry troop character or anything like that does flat 3 damage. So having the Shadow Seer do 3 damage on certain things is really, really nice when it actually goes off. Once if you do 1 damage and 2 damage, 1 damage just feels horrible, 2 damage just feels normal, 3 damage just feels absolutely exciting for that D3 damage on her Mistave. And then this one, you're just really staging and jumping from ruin to ruin, right? You're not playing like the 2 other lists where you're staging behind a ruin and then you just go out and reposition yourself and take over the board state. This one, you're just moving in waves into the ruins, right? Or behind the ruins, rather, or into them if they're block line of sight. And then position yourself to get out there and really use your fusion pistols, your neuro disruptors, and just try to do damage that way, right? Obviously, you want to continue to use your grenades. Obviously, you want to have the Void Weavers, watching everything that's going on, so you can actually, plink off some wounds and some units before you get into there. But also, that can be a deficit to you because now you're on foot. If you start removing models and they start removing models on the front flanks, that can make your challenge a little bit, that charge a little bit more challenging for you. So you have to be careful with those particular things. This list does play a lot. This is hard mode. It's more challenging to actually use this because you're trying to make everything survive. And when a unit of intercessors that just shoots, 20 to 40 bolter shots at you, it's really going to destroy 2 of these units if they split fire, right? They're just going to go bye-bye. It's going to be super simple for them just to kill them all, even with your 4+ invul, even with your fade back, things like that. So you got to play very methodically and be very intelligent in understanding how to use the ruins and the board state to your advantage. Using the Sky Weavers obviously helps you out with any vehicles, gets you out there, gives you some speed. Having 12 of them is very nice as well. I actually want to run a list one day where I can have like 2 units of 12 with 13, attached with the character of troops, maximum mounted with Void Weavers. Basically allow us to get everything that we can get to a maximum of it point wise. That would be super, super nice. I think it would help us out a ton, and I think it would help out with our win rate as well. Since Aeldari is not doing well, and you can only imagine how Harlequins, Ghost of the Webway, is not doing well either. We're not in a prime location in this meta right now to really be performing at a high rate, win rate. So we should see in the future. It's only been, about a week and a half, 2 weeks since we actually had the new codex drop. So we shall see what people end up finding out. Hopefully, this video today helped you, kind of maybe gauge around an area of where you want to go with your pure Harlequins. You might find a list where you can fit your points and characters and units in there correctly, where you're not at 0 point at a deficit of your total points of 2,000 points. And hopefully these lists today were able to just help you out, strategize and build and position a little bit smarter. Thank you so much to everyone that participated and watched the show to the very end. I just want to be able to, help out a little bit, run pure Harlequins, help you understand how I run pure Harlequins and build army lists based on that. And the secret really being is just be smart. Know that you play with 1,000 cuts, to kill something, to destroy something. Understand that you have to be very intelligent maneuvering and positioning on the board and how to do that. And we're going to break that down even more in the future, where I'm going to give you some visuals on TTS showing you exactly what it takes, how to maneuver, how to position these army lists right here. Thank you so much. Once again, make sure to like, share, and subscribe as always. And don't forget, Onslaught Gaming 40K, where victory is just a strategy away. Take care, everyone, and have a wonderful night.